Hello, grade 5 mathematicians. So, what we're going to look at today is some revision for volume. So, let's get into it. So, the space occupied by a 3D object is known as volume. You guessed it. And that is what we've been working through this week. So volume is measured in cubic units. So whenever we work with volume, we have to have a unit of measurement. So if we are not given centimeters, feet, meters, then we just say that volume is cubic units. But if we are given a specific unit of measurement, then we will say cubic centimeters, cubic feet, cubic meters, etc. So what we need to know is that a 3D object has three dimensions. Those three dimensions are length, width, and height, especially when we're dealing with this rectangular prism, which is what we have been working with. So if we look at the cubic unit version of a rectangular prism, we can figure out how many layers we have on the diagram. So let's look at this question that we've been given. How many layers do you see? One, two, three. So remember, layers go up from bottom to top. So we have three layers. So the number of layers I have is three. How many cubes do we find in one layer? So let's look at the top and let's count. I've got one, two, oh, sorry. One, two, three, four, five, six, seven, eight. So I have 8 cubes in one layer. So how many cubes do I have all together in this rectangular prism? I will say, what is 8 times 3? And 8 times 3 gives me 24. So when I look at this cubic units, this rectangular prism takes 24 cubes. So my volume will be 24 cubic units. But we won't always get the cubes to help us figure out what the volume of a rectangular prism is. So what we have to do is learn the formula that we have been working with. So let's revise that. Volume is equal to length times width times height. So whenever you're given any diagram, you try and identify what is the length. The length in this diagram is here. It's 5 centimeters. So length is 5, sorry, times the width is what's on the side, which is 3, times the height is going up. And we can see that that is 4. So my length is 5, my width is 3, my height is 4. And then I will multiply. I will say, what is 5 times 3? 5 times 3 is 15. And 15 times 4, 15 times 4 is 60. But I don't just leave it there. I will say 60 cubic centimeters because my unit of measurement in this case is given to me as centimeters. So when I work out volume, it will be cubic centimeters. All right, now this is the one where we all had a little bit of trouble, and that was calculating the volume of a composite figure. Now, in order for us to work with this, it's complicated when it's all together. So our best thing to do is step one, decompose the figure into two parts. So decompose, remember, means to break apart. So we can make it into simpler parts by seeing that there are two rectangular prisms here. And how will I look at and see that? Um, it'll be when I look at this middle point here and I break it up by this middle point. Then step 2, I will calculate the volume of prism 1. Step 3, I'll calculate the volume of prism 2. And finally, step 4, I'll calculate the total volume. So let's get into the decomposing the figure. So let's look at this figure. I have one rectangular prism, two rectangular prism. And I'm going to decompose it at this point. So when I look at it, let's see what rectangular prism 1 has. I can see that the length will be 6. I can see that the height is 12. And I can see that the width is on the side here. I'll do it up here. The side, I don't have a value right at the top. But if I follow along, I can see that all these widths are the same. So the width will actually be 5. So my first rectangular prism will have a length of 6, a width of 5, and a height of 12. Now, what I've got to do is figure out what is the value of my rectangular prism for the second one. So if the total length is 14, but I've already used up 6 for the first rectangular prism, what am I left with? In this case here, I'm left with 14 minus 6, which is 8. My width is the same because my width is 5 inches. But what would my height be? If the total height is 12, but I can see here that I've used up 8 inches for my height. 12 minus 8 gives me the leftover height to be 4. So what I would recommend that you do is actually use your pencil and highlight or shade in the information that you have, just like I did here, because it makes it easier to solve. So let's look at the first volume, the volume of the first prism. So when we're looking at the first prism, we said, remember, the length is 6, the height was 12, and the width we said was 5. So volume equals length times width times height, which is equal to 6 times 5 times 12, which is equal to, I can say 6 times 60, which is 360 cubic inches, because the unit of measurement here is inches. Then let's go to the second prism. Let's recap. So if the entire thing is 14, but I've used up 6, what am I left with for my length? 14 minus 6 is 8. My width is still 5. And then my height, if the total height is 12, but I've used up 8, what am I left with? 12 minus 8 is 4. So volume is equal to length times width times height. So for my second value, I have length is 8 times 5, which is the width, times 4, which is the height. 8 times 5 is 40. 40 times 4 is 160 cubic inches. Now, I'm left with my last bit, which is to work out the total, I have to add up these two values. So in order to add them up, I will say 360 plus 160, and that will give me 520 cubic inches. Okay, so that is the composite shape. So just always remember the 4 steps. Step 1, decompose the figure into 2 parts. Step 2, calculate the volume of prism 1. Step 3, calculate the volume of prism 2. And step 4, calculate the total volume. All right, last question that we're going to look at. Shamsa buys a jewelry box with the length, so important information that we have here. The length is 20 centimeters, the width is 10 centimeters, and the height is 8 centimeters. It says that 500 cubic centimeters of the jewelry box is already full. That's already 500 cubic centimeters used up. How much space is left? So how much space is left? What are we going to do here? First step, work out the volume. Volume equals length times width times height. So I'm going to say 20 times 10 times 8 So 20 times 10 is 200. 200 times 8 is 1,600 centimeters, cubic centimeters, cubic centimeters. That is the total volume. But now I have 500 cubic centimeters used up. So what is the space that is left? So the space left will be 1,600 cubic centimeters minus the 500 cubic centimeters. So Shamsa has 1,100 cubic centimeters left in her jewelry box. All right. Thank you for the privilege of your time. I hope this helped. Go back and listen to it again, especially the composite figure part. And if you still have any questions, do not hesitate to message me.